Maybe we
Lord
can
Gunter.
Darn right.
I'm one of his biggest fans.
It's a Sun Media old home week.
It is. So one real quick here for
Yes.
$3 billion, you could hire 3,000 cops and pay them for about 10 years.
Climate emergency.
But there's a climate emergency. Just saying. Or if you don't want to do that, 3,000 paramedics, bless their hearts, out there working in the streets, and pay them for a decade instead of flushing it down the toilet on that nonsense.
That's for 1 year of the green.
That's correct,
the
for
green
1 year.
Plan.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, we've got Lorne Gunter. He's a columnist with the Edmonton Sun, Calgary Sun, Post Media. Chris is apparently his biggest fan. Lorne, thanks for coming on the show. Maybe you can give us some analysis about the candidates' race in Edmonton, if you're so inclined. I was looking at the polls, and back in August, they had Tim Cartmel sort of running away with this. And in a few short months, it's flipped to Andrew Knack, who was just behind him. Tony Caterina, he's a long time city councillor. He's third. And then Raheem Jaffer, who would have actually probably made it pretty fun if you care about interesting politics, mayor, former Conservative MP a long time ago. I was looking for the phrase busty hookers to make its way back into political parlance, but I think I'll be disappointed tonight because he's fourth. What caused that flip there?
I don't think there's been a flip. The problem with polls for municipal politics is the sample sizes are so small, you can't know what the representative of the population as a whole. And turnouts are really bad for municipal elections. Last time in 2021, Edmonton had turnout of just over 37%, which was the highest in 2 decades. It's typically around 31 or 32%. So, you got a lot of people will say, well, I'm going to vote for Cartmel, I'm going to vote for Knack, whatever. And then they don't bother to vote. So the polls municipally are very, very hard to read. Knack was ahead in June. Cartmel was ahead in August. Knack's ahead again now. Knack has, I think, the biggest advantage because he has the red machine behind it. He has this thing called Working Families Edmonton, which won't call itself a party and won't register as a party because then it's subject to fundraising and spending limits. It wants to be able to fundraise as much as possible, spend as much as it wants, but it is backed by all the civic unions, all the city workers unions.
Yep.
It's backed by the firefighters. It's backed by the Canadian Labour Congress. And they have all the organizational and get out the vote might of the NDP. So in Edmonton, that's a big deal because 20 of our 20 MLAs at the provincial level, of course, are NDP. So this is a huge advantage for Knack. There has to be, for Cartmel to win, there would have to be an enormous anti-incumbent vote.
Right.
And I think there is, but I don't know whether it's big enough. And the problem with that is Cartmel's an incumbent.
Right.
He's not the incumbent mayor, but he's an incumbent councillor. And the one big issue at the beginning of the campaign, which I think has probably stayed the number one issue through the whole campaign, was this ridiculous infill development policy that Edmonton has that allows the city to permit 8-unit developments on 50-foot lots.
Holy.
So I've shown pictures in my column of lovely little bungalows overwhelmed on either side by these gigantic 8-unit developments. And everybody on council, except for a woman named Jennifer Rice and another named Karen Principe, everyone voted for that development bylaw, including Cartmel. So, I have an anti-incumbent campaign going in my columns. Don't vote for any of them. This was a terrible council. It was full of really dumb ideas. You've talked about some of them, the electric buses, the bike lanes. I once wrote that the 5 biggest impediments to bike lanes in Edmonton are November, December, January, February, and March.
Right. You could probably throw April in the mix there too.
Yep, lots of years you can. But, so I don't know what to make of the polls.
Right.
The last poll I saw, the most recent one that I saw, Cartmel was ahead by about double over Knack. And Knack's not an appealing candidate. I've said before that if I had to rank the 13 members of the past council, including Mayor Sohi and the 12 councillors, Knack would be at the bottom of the list. I think he's the least competent of all the members of council, but he has all the unions behind him, and he has the organizational might of the NDP. So I got to say, I'm not optimistic that we won't wake up Wednesday morning, because we're not going to get the full counts tonight. We won't wake up Wednesday morning with Andrew Knack as the mayor of Edmonton.
Oh.
And I saw CBC's most recent polling. It came out, I think it was between the 1st and the 8th. They have 46% of people that, well, take it for what you will, 46% of people that were surveyed by Janet Brown Polling, who is sort of the pollster of note around here, are undecided.
Yeah.
So where does that play into this?
I think there's an awful lot of people who went to the polls today not knowing who they're going to vote for.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking there were a fair number of people who went to the polls today and gave up in frustration. I went at 10 o'clock this morning, and it took me 31 minutes.
Yeah.
30 minutes to get my ballot, 1 minute to fill them out. There's the most convoluted process that the city has come up with to register you at the poll. Everyone must show ID to get into where the polling station is. Mine's just an elementary school. So I had to show ID to get in the elementary school. Then I had to get in a line for registration. And I had to show my ID again at registration. And then after you fill out the registration form, and it's initialed by the returning officer, then you get to go and stand in the long line, which is where you go to get your ballots. And seriously, there were people who sat at the returning officers' tables for 10 minutes before they were handed their ballots because they weren't previously registered. So they had to be registered online. There's a deputy returning officer typing in all our information to the city's lists. And it was appalling how bad it was. And then I got my ballots. That was the easy part. Filled them out, took them, stuffed them in the boxes. And that was it, but it took 31 minutes. And the latest report I heard is that at some of the polling stations in Edmonton, where the polls closed about 20 minutes ago, there were over 200 people standing in line, and they will get a chance to vote if they're prepared to stay there. But this is not a provincial election. It's not a federal election. And so lots of people get fed up with municipal politics. They didn't follow the race real closely. They don't really care. It's wrong. I think you should care more about municipal politicians than about provincial and federal ones because they have the effect on your daily life. How often does the garbage get picked up? How well are the streets cleared of snow? Is there new infrastructure being built? But in Edmonton, it's crazy. They don't worry too much about whether the snow is being cleared away. They're too busy cleaning bike lanes. I take my wife to work quite often. She works downtown. And along the main thoroughfare that we get, it's often very slippery in the driving lanes in the winter. But right next door to it, the bike path has been cleared already. The plows, the little tiny plows or the brushes that they use are out at 4 a.m. so that the cyclists, 3 of them, have a really nice clear path to go. So really, I think you should spend more time worrying about municipal politics than the other 2 levels. And look at the tax increases. Last year, Edmonton City Council was going to raise taxes by 8.9%. There was such a hue and cry about that they cut it back to 6.6. But nonetheless, it's 7, it's 6, it's 6.5, it's 7 again. The tax increases are horrendous. And this group called Working Families says taxes need to be higher because we need to preserve municipal services. Well, if you wouldn't hire so many municipal workers and you wouldn't pay them so well, you could afford to keep the services going. But they, as you said, they wasted about $60 million on these electric buses that don't work, and people could have told them they weren't going to work. But at any one time when they had the 60 of them in service, they're all not out of service. But at any one time with the 60 of them, 75% were in the shop.
Oh. Well, that's a pretty big failure rate.
Yeah. It's not good.
Yeah.
Well,
There's one seat left in the movie theater. It's in the front row. You have a bad neck. This is what we call a last resort. If your most recent electricity bill says the rate of last resort, then your rate is like the front row seat in the movie theater. It will serve its purpose, but there are likely better options available.
and you've got concerns happening in Edmonton that I think are happening all over the country, and that's the fact that they added some like 200,000 people over just a few short years to the greater Edmonton area, and then you don't have the infrastructure keeping up. Well, unless you're talking about bike lanes, those seem to be keeping up to the usage, as in almost nobody. But policing budgets aren't keeping up with the population, and those are like the only things that I think you should probably spend money on is infrastructure and policing in a city.
I mean, those certainly are two big ones. I think the city of Edmonton's police service has a pretty healthy budget. They're always claiming poverty, but but to their credit or not, they have been given an awful lot of social service tasks. Not policing tasks.
Yes.
And that uses up a big part of their budget. The city should spend money on social workers if that's what they want the cops to do.
Right.
But I'll give you an example of how messed up the city of Edmonton's priorities are. There's a little park in our neighborhood that no one uses. And I'm not exaggerating. Nobody uses it. So I would go over with my dogs a couple times a week and throw them a frisbee and chase a ball and that sort of thing. But it's technically not an off-leash park. So I went over there about 6 weeks ago. I'm there not more than 5 minutes. And the two bylaw enforcement officers drive their pickup truck across the lawn to come and give me $100 tickets per dog. For having one off leash. And yet you can go downtown, and on every single corner in downtown Edmonton, there will be people dumping. There will be people shooting up drugs. There'll be people yelling at invisible people, and nothing gets done about that. So when you're a citizen and something like that happens, you think the city's priorities are all screwy. I am a bigger threat to public safety with my dogs and a frisbee than are the meth addicts downtown in Edmonton who are shooting up. My wife works downtown. She took her staff for lunch about 6 months ago. They went about 3/4 of a block, and they counted 10 piles of human feces between their office and the restaurant.
Yep.
You're kidding.
Nope.
No.
Can I jump in there quick, Lorne?
Please do.
When I went to City Hall a little while ago, yelling at the city not to spend taxpayers' money on the Edmonton Oilers, because they're literally on the Forbes list. They don't need taxpayers' money. And right outside of Edmonton City Hall, my daughter and I were accosted by a woman completely out of her mind. We had to dodge around her and then go through other doors. And yeah, there's like human excrement on the sidewalk in front of Edmonton City Hall. It was astonishing. that
Yeah.
this is in the downtown of our provincial capital.
Yeah.
I actually have a couple of stats here real quick. I wrote
Please.
up a really deep dive on Alberta, on Edmonton spending priorities. This is based on last year, but I think it still tracks. The city's bureaucracy is growing in the wrong places. So the city, last I checked, had 392 people on its communications and engagement team. A decade ago, there were about 71 full-time positions under that. So we've seen a growth in their comms team of 449%.
Oh,
Yeah,
my
like
lord.
what
And I've
they're
seen them
wasting
work.
money on is a crime.
I've seen them work. There's a neighborhood in North Edmonton that's very unhappy about the city putting bike lanes through the neighborhood because nobody in that neighborhood bikes anywhere, especially not downtown, which is where all the bike lanes head. They all head downtown. We're not a downtown city.
No.
We have the lowest percentage of our workforce working in the core of any of the 10 largest cities in the country. People in Edmonton work in the ring road or outside the ring road in oil service or in warehousing or in things that don't get done downtown. But the city wants to build all these bike lanes to downtown. So they went through this neighborhood called Dunluce and they took out everybody's on-street parking on one side of the street so they could put in a bike lane. And the residents complained and they said, "No, this is ridiculous. Nobody bikes here. Why are you doing this? Why are you making us park a block and a half away from our homes?" And so the city's response was to send one of these comm teams to a neighborhood bear pit session. And those people are masterful at redirecting the discussions and molding the answers and they'll get up and somebody will say, "Well, I'm really mad about this one," and they'll say, "So you're saying that if you could still park on the street, you would be okay with bike lanes?" And then the report goes back to the city. Dunluce loves bike lanes, and that's how they work. That's their engagement strategy. So I think they need a clean sweep of council in Edmonton and a fresh start. But
Yeah.
I don't think we're going to Tim Cartmel, who is the guy that has been portrayed in the media as the right wing alternative to the lefties. He voted with the left majority 90% of the time during the last council. So, what are you going to do?
Yeah. And the only real sort of new face that it would, I think, was capable of doing anything was Raheem Jaffer.
Yeah.
He's a conservative. He's the only one running on a tax cut.
Yeah.
And they called him irresponsible for suggesting a tax cut.
Yeah.
He seems to think that crime is a problem in Edmonton, and yet he's between 4 and 7%.
Yeah.
So-
And I love Raheem. He's a really nice guy.
He's fun.
Very charming. As you said earlier, he would be fun as the mayor.
Yeah.
And a big part of being mayor is you have to go around to all the dinners and glad hand and bring greetings at high school grads and do all that sort of stuff. And Raheem would be really good at that.
Oh,
Sure.
for sure.
But he has no organization.
Yeah.
Right? He's got in late. He didn't form a party. One of the parties, there are two parties, named parties running in this election. One is Better Edmonton, which is Cartmel's party. And the second one is PACE, which is Principled Accounting Coalition for Edmonton. And they have some very good policies. But they don't have candidates in all 12 wards, and they don't have a mayoral candidate. So that works against them. And then there's Working Families, which is really the left-wing party, which won't allow itself to be called a party. But Raheem doesn't have even those things going for him. So he would have to have wowed people far more than he did, or he would have to have had a big advertising budget for TV and social media, which he hasn't had either. So I don't hold out a lot of hope for Raheem to win, but he's the guy, like you said, who's got the policies that are closest to my own.
Right. And I think he probably needed a longer runway. There's an entire
for
generation
sure.
of people who don't know who Raheem Jaffer is. I think he would have appealed to younger people if he had sort of been in the game a little bit longer. And when you say that we need to have a clean slate at Edmonton City Hall, one of the reasons I would love to see that is their drug policy. Your wife, you said, works downtown. Do you remember when they said, what's the best way to deal with the drug addicts plaguing the downtown core? Let's give them needles in the LRT stations. So then all the people who had to live in, to work downtown, because it's a completely anti-car downtown core, they had to trip over all the meth zombies to use the LRT. And that was the solution. That was the big brain idea to dealing with the drug addict problem downtown, is encourage them to get into the LRT stations.
You can talk to people almost every day who used to use the LRT, but cannot use it now because they're afraid to get on the train. They may not be afraid they're going to be assaulted, but they're going to be accosted, or they're going to have to see someone who's slouched over on the seat, sick, let's say. So it's not good. And so those are the things that a city council should take care of. But they don't. They are big on what they call Blatchford, which is a subdivision where the old city center airport used to be, which is all green. And the city's its own developer there, and it's spent well over $200 million trying to develop this eco-friendly development. And it has by this time, it was supposed to have built 3,000 different homes there. It has built just over 100. They're horribly inefficient. They don't know how to run. They should just turn it over to private developers and let them do it. In 10 years, the place would be full of 30,000 people, and that would relieve some of the density problems. But instead of doing stuff like that, they pass a development bylaw that says, you can build an 8-unit apartment in the middle of the block and overshadow everything on either side of it. And we know now, because there's a group that's done some really good research on this infill policy. It's called Edmonton Neighborhood United. And they said that within 50 meters, so 3 lots on either side of one of these 8-unit developments, housing prices have gone down by 7.5%. It works out to, on the average Edmonton home, $35,000 in value that you've lost because the city allowed these stupid things to be built. And my fear is, because Working Families Edmonton looks like it's going to re-elect 8 of the last council, is that we're just going to they're going to double down on this.
And there's all the character that Edmonton had in some of its older communities
actually
obliterated.
When you mentioned that, Regina has the same bylaw. We're doing the same thing in Saskatchewan, Lorne. And Regina has this little area called Cathedral. It is charming. It is turn of the century cookie cutter houses. And so between 2 of these turn of the century cookie cutter houses goes up one of these, 6 plexes or 8 plexes or whatever it was. And just at the drywall stage, don't you know, the whole thing burnt to the ground? Nobody knows what happened.
We had a couple of them have very unfortunate fires too. But the other thing is that this Edmonton Neighborhoods United found is that no one in the country, no other community of our size in the country, had tried these developments before us. And they uncovered, through Freedom of Information, a report that the city had internally. Its own urban planners had done a study internally that said, this isn't going to work. And yet the administration bamboozled council into signing off on this, at which point I called Edmonton City Council the bobbleheads for the administration, because whatever administration wants, that's what they get. And it's so appalling. But despite all of that, and the fact that you know, can the federal government pass a law that will lop $35,000 off my housing price? Yeah, maybe. In the long run, if they screw the economy up bad enough and there's not enough demand, yeah, sure, that can happen. Can the province do it? Yeah. But the city's done it, and within a year and a half, that's what's happened. So people should be far more interested in municipal politics than they are, but
Yeah.
unfortunately, they're not.
Yeah, because federal politics is also terrible. So, it is what it is. Lorne, before we let you go, and thank you
Yep.
for going a little bit long with us. I think we brought you on a little
No
bit
worries.
late. We appreciate you for having a keen eye to this, but just remind us where people can find your work.
Okay, well, I'm on the Toronto Sun's YouTube channel for my video presentations, and you can just look me up under edmontonsun.com, opinion columnist, and most of my work is there.
Excellent. Lorne, thank you so much for coming on the show.
You're welcome.
Alrighty.